Callan, Dylan, can you guys hear me or see me?
We can
Oh,
both.
Ah, there you are, gentlemen. I want to congratulate you both on making a very interesting film because I saw it in the beginning one way and was quite surprised by where it went. So I'm going to ask you the question that I asked the directors yesterday, right? Is this a tragedy or a comedy?
I think
I
it's a bit of both.
yeah, I would actually I've been saying this and I think it's kind of true. I think it's a love story.
All right.
I
I'll
think
go
it's
with
a
that.
yeah, I think it's a love story between friends is what I actually think it is. So, inherent in a love story is both of those things. But I think on paper they would call us a dark comedy.
That's true. That's what they've been saying.
All right, fair enough. So I saw the film with my girlfriend, and she had many interesting viewpoints that were very different than mine, right? And so it boils down to this level of betrayal between, two friends who are brothers who loved each other. And so the first, thing is, why couldn't they settle this another way? Why was the hurt so deep that both of their reactions were so extreme?
I feel like one of the kind of through lines of the movie here is that at a certain point, it is what it is. Doesn't fly anymore. Um, and you have to decide for yourself where that threshold lies. Uh, but yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, Dylan. I don't know what it would take to get me to the same point, but I think everybody has a breaking point at which they threaten to kill their friends. And if anything, that serves as a testament to the power of the friendship, uh, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I also think that they could have. I'm of the mindset that they could have resolved it that way, but there is a point at which, is it worth it to even resolve it that way?
Yeah, what's to
Um,
begin? How can the
yeah,
friendship continue
but
with that?
and I think it might be your line, Callan, or it's somewhere in the script, which is the thought like if this is all, if this all worth nothing, then, and we're not willing to do this, then maybe it's not a great friendship at all, or something of that sort. That sentiment is aired. And I think that's a really powerful sentiment. At the end of the day, this is like, what lengths are you willing to go to for someone that you really love to right the mistake that you've made? And so I do think that they could have done that. I just don't think that they would have remained friends.
It's true, and I do think, you know, in the same vein, it's something of a performance for each other. It's like, look what
Mhm.
you broke, and then for you, it's like, look what I'm willing to do. So
Yeah, at the very
yeah,
end, I think that, Abby comes up and, says this is your kind of last chance to back away. And the boys cocking their pistols is them replying to her that it's not about you at all at this
yeah,
point. So
exactly.
It's funny. I'm so glad you said that because, like I said, my girlfriend and I had a very deep conversation about this film, and I'm going to ask you about masculinity after this question. But she saw Abigail as the villain, which really surprised me. She kind of put a lot of this on her as being the reason why these two guys seem like they're good guys. They're not bad guys that led them down this dark path. So, what do you think about the idea that Abigail is really the villain of this story?
I feel like she's certainly one of many catalysts, if not the chief catalyst for the story. But I don't think the story really has villains, and I think that's often that's often a necessity in something like a duel, like this dignified but animalistic resolution of a conflict. Is that there aren't always good and bads in something. There's just perspective, uh, and for both of them, it was powerful enough to warrant the fight. Uh, but yeah, how do you feel about that, Dale?
yeah, I'm with you on that. I think everyone is not great in this movie.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone is clearly good or bad. I think and I do respond to like moral gray area narratives a lot. Like I like those. I tend to like those. Um, I certainly don't think Abby is a villain. I've also heard both sides. I've heard that Abby is the voice of reason as well, and which she kind of is. If we're dissecting it pretty cut and dry, I think the four boys are normal guys. But the moment that they meet Burr and Joey, I think every character that comes into the mix after that is like this almost Midsummer Night's Dream kind of fey crazy being trying to urge them into doing things that are outside of their comfort zone. I think that they live up to it. Abby is another character who is very much a normal human being and is looking at the scenario with fresh eyes going, what the fuck is going on? But it's important to remember all the characters are still like young and they're making mistakes. And so I think that that's part of the allure. But we've heard a lot. I think my happiest thing is the takeaway that you guys had enough to discuss and talk about afterwards with differing opinions. That's always a great thing to hear.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so this idea of masculinity, this like, oh, they're gentlemen, or is it toxic, where these guys are resolving to this ridiculous way to end this argument. And when you look at the older characters, and Patrick Warburton and the guy that played Rodolfo were absolutely fantastic. I mean, they were great, almost scene stealers. They have this like ethereal view of how this is how men should settle things. But when I speak to her, she's like, this is absolutely asinine and ridiculous, and no woman would ever do this, right? So is there a level of just testosterone dripping machismo and what's going on between these two dudes?
Do you want to go first? I went first before.
I mean, there's certainly, I'm not going to deny the elephant in the room. I do think that this is maybe like a male-centric issue. I don't think, I agree that I'm not sure it would occur in the female space. However, I do think that there is a version of this same issue that gets solved in a female way that is very different, obviously, from dueling. In terms of the masculinity debate, I think there's quite a funny moment at the dinner table where Abby is explaining, why this is so stupid, and she goes, "This is toxic masculinity," and Rodolfo just kind of like, and he scoffs. But the whole point was that we're trying to put both of those arguments side by side in a completely valid way. No argument in this movie is ever invalid. So I think that's part of the fun of it. But yeah, I think honestly that the way that the boys settle their dispute is inherently masculine. And I think it is a story that does actually need to get told. It's not like, I think that there's a lot of charge to the word nowadays, where I think like in this case, I think, letting them be as they are, regardless of how ridiculous the circumstances are, isn't necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I think we look at it with pretty plain eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, something I've been saying quite a lot is that I feel like the film is at once a celebration of and a condemnation of masculinity, including its more toxic constituents. And it's a conversation a lot of people are having these days. What is the character of man at a base level? And I think these sorts of conversations in the films like this help to remind us not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Even if it does seem absurd on the face of it, there is a beauty to it as well. And I think what Dylan said is true. Both sides are discussed compellingly. And so the conversations like you guys were having after seeing the film, it's no surprise they're so varied, and I'm glad for that.
There was a scene earlier. I don't know if you remember this one, Cal, but there was a scene in earlier version of the script where Abby had already arrived, and the night of it. So the duel didn't actually take place the night of the dinner. The night of the dinner ended with the four main boys, Rodolfo and Burr, getting incredibly drunk around a fire and reciting poetry to each other.
I remember.
And it was a moment where I think the toxic masculinity debate gets brought up between Aphrodite and Abby, and then was kind of stopped in a moment when Abby was incredibly surprised all 4 boys individually had a very heartfelt poem that they knew off the top of their head. So that I thought was actually a great scene, but it, we didn't actually end up getting around to it. We thought the journey of going right from the dinner was a little more dynamic towards the end of the movie.
So yeah, they're giving me the rap notice, but let me sneak one question in, because this is a very great ensemble performance, right? When you watch all the characters, they really each have a piece that really contributes to the movie. And so, Luke and Justin yesterday told me that you guys are old friends, this whole group, and you jumped in on day one to get into it. So, just for our audience, talk about working with these actors, working with greats like Warburton, and what you really want them to take from the film, both of you, please.
I feel like everyone in this film, they saw the vision from a very early stage. And when I first read the script, and Bill and I were some of the earliest readers of the script, I knew exactly where it was going, within psychic reason, obviously. And everyone that they brought on board, they're all tone setters. So I feel like everyone was just so professional, but also such a joy to work with. So yeah, for me, it was the perfect storm.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment. I mean, I think that's part of the reason that this movie works really well. It's because I think everyone genuinely liked each other, and everyone is willing to give that person a chance. I think that's how great chemistry gets made. Patrick is such a remarkable human being in general, who I'm now great friends with. But the energy that both of those older gentlemen brought to our set was, I think, such a breath of fresh air. But it was very funny, kind of similar to what we described before, the dichotomy between like what is the realism and what is the fantasy of this movie. I thought that was in part what made it so fun. And honestly, the journey from the original script to getting the funding, getting it made in Indianapolis, and COVID, having it be edited for the while that it did, then getting bought by Lionsgate, then now we're doing national and international release. And it's been such a beautiful, beautiful run. And I do think that this movie has it has a lot to say to people currently who might feel interested to know more right now as an audience member. So I really do hope that they go see it on the 31st. I think it'll start a cool dialogue the same way that you had a dialogue. So
awesome. Colin, Dylan, thank you, gentlemen. You made a thoughtful film. You'll get a good review on Sat and RT for me. I appreciate your time. Cheers.
Woo!
Thanks very much.
You.